Someone's got to highlight this stuff. Dave Trabert with the Kansas Policy Institute does as good a job as anybody on this front, and we appreciate his time on KCMO. This dropping a few days ago in the Sentinel. Prairie Village 2024 payroll includes a city administrator and 3 deputy/assistant administrators. And these are pretty darn good gigs, huh, Dave? Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. Yeah, there's it's not so much just what they're paid, but how many of them there are. And there's, as you said, there's 4 top officials just adjacent in Leawood with 50% more population. There's only 2. And this is why people's property taxes are so high. It's because of what government officials choose to spend.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you look at the assistant city administrators and the number of deputy city administrators, and you're right. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're making some nice coin at anywhere from about $150,000 to $200,000. And don't forget, that comes with all the frothy government benefits. But it's the per capita assistant city managers in Prairie Village that has, 20,000 people landlocked and really can't grow anymore?
That's right.
Wow. So how much growth has there been on this front over the last few years as a lot of municipalities have just been spending like crazy?
Well, it varies by jurisdiction, but you have, like, the city of Overland Park has increased property tax revenue about 500% since 1997. We're seeing multiples of inflation and population where property tax is going up 2 to 4 times inflation and population. It's just not necessary. Services are needed, but the more efficiently you can provide those services, the lower the taxes can be. And unfortunately, there's just no interest in doing that. I was just looking at, like, the Overland Park budget proposal for 2026 that was just introduced. They're proposing another $5 million property tax increase. It's about 6%, even though they have $158 million in the bank, unspent.
See, I didn't realize that part. So I saw those numbers, and the property tax revenue portion of Overland Park's 2026 proposed budget is $93 million. That's up from $53 million back in 2018. So we're talking about an 80% hike over 8 years in property tax revenue for the city of Overland Park. But I didn't realize what you just noted there. I mean, what does that tell you about how efficiently or lack thereof the city's running in Overland Park?
Well, it's that what that says is they're taking in a lot more money than they need to provide the services, and yet they still choose to raise taxes because the thinking is if we don't raise taxes today, it'll be harder to raise them tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that's looking inward. That's looking at how does this impact staff. It's never looking at how does this impact taxpayers. You know, and budgets get produced, and this is pretty common in any government. The staff produces the budget, and then the elected officials just kind of look at it and rubber stamp it. Here's an interesting test. Look at the budgets right now that are being proposed, and then look at the numbers after city council or county commissioners approve them. There will be next to no changes because we just do whatever staff wants. It's just craziness. Overland Park has half of the coming year's budget in the bank already, and they say we just need more.
Do they say, will they try to justify these reserves by saying it, keeps our credit rating high or something like that?
Oh, sure. There's and that's true. Although now when you look at the difference, yes, because the bond rating agencies are looking out for themselves. I mean, think about this. How can a city like Overland Park or Prairie Village not pay off their debt when they are absolutely in charge of how much revenue they take in? If they need more revenue, they just raise their mill rate. Even if valuations could go up, they are not going to be in a position where they can't pay their debt. And yet these bond rating agencies say, well, we want you to have more, and that becomes an excuse. And then they get proud of having a AAA bond rating while people are being taxed out of their homes.
Yeah, it's so.
If you're worried about it, having a double A instead of a triple A, look at the difference in interest you might pay, or maybe just borrow less. Make more efficient of the money you have. There's ways to work around this. Nobody who moves to a city and says, I want to go there, they have a AAA bond rating. That's not how people think. It's how government employees think.
That is so well said. It's like, I don't know which cliche is better, inmates running the asylum with the staff running the budget, or if it's, maybe this is too dramatic, but it's kind of like a deep state deal where the elected officials aren't actually running the show in many respects. And that seems incredibly problematic, Dave. Is there any way to clean this up?
You have to have different people elected. You have to have people running for office because it's kind of hard to blame the staff. It's human nature. You say, tell me how much you want. I'm going to tell you what I want. Mm-hmm. It's up to the elected officials to give direction. They should say, look, we want you, for example, to come to us with a budget that does not cut services but does not raise taxes. Now that's the staff's job to do that. But there's no direction that's given. It's just because that's not the focus. That's not what people run. That's what we need are people who will run for office, who will uphold, they will make decisions based on constitutional principles. They will make decisions that are taxpayer focused, not looking in the mirror.
Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. And on that note, we were just talking about this before you hopped on. Fox 4 had a story about how no one's really gauged the interest of Overland Park residents on the idea of the Royals possibly being at the Hesperia campus. What do you think the feedback would be if the residents were to be asked for their input on this?
I don't know, but I'm sure there are some who would say, no, thank you. Not in my backyard. It depends where it goes because, again, while the elected officials get to say, look, we did this, we brought them in, and certainly some businesses that would be right around there would benefit, but there's a lot of people who would be negatively impacted. Just look at the concerns that when people go to city council meetings when there's a new development proposed. Wait a minute, look at what it's going to do to traffic. Look at what it's going to do to these other things. I don't, what's it going to do to my property values if you're located close to that? But no, the public isn't consulted on this.
No, never. Before I let you go, Dave, I do want to ask you about this too. Major Kansas universities earning a failing grade for teacher math instruction. So how does this happen where we have teachers around Kansas who don't know how to teach young people the math that they need to be learning to become, functioning members of society?
Well, you're citing a report we had from the National Council on Teacher Quality. They analyze the math to do the same with reading preparation for 700 universities around the country, and we have some that do rather well. No university in Kansas gets an A on teacher math preparation, but there are some Bs like University of Kansas, Wichita State, but there are some Fs like Emporia State and Kansas State. And the way this comes about is that the people in charge at the education schools are saying this is the way we want to do it. And when there's research that says this is not effective, then it's too bad. I mean, it's the Emporia State and Kansas State refused to provide information to NCTQ to analyze their reading programs. They were able to get enough online to evaluate math, but they don't even want to show it. And meanwhile, so here's the results. So there's a school in Kansas where the school board members sit down with the teachers and the principal, and they say, what are the barriers holding kids back from being proficient here? One elementary teacher puts her hand up and says, I don't know how to teach kids how to read very well. And there was shock with the superintendent and the principal. And then all but one other teacher said, yeah, me too. And they all cited the same reason. we weren't taught properly how to do this in college.
Wow. That tells you all you need to know right there. What a shame.
Yeah.
Dave, excellent work as always. Thank you for bringing these things to our attention, and we'll talk to you next week, my man.
Thanks, Pete. Have a good day.
You as well. Dave Trabert on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.